You want to learn knowledge, but in reality, you're just watching some random guy playing video games. Well, you're in the right place because we are talking about biomolecules. So the first thing that you should be aware of is its prefix, bio. It means that when something has both carbon and hydrogen, it doesn't mean that is GMO-free care. Water, not a biomolecule, lacks a carbon atom. I just fell straight to my death. Carbon dioxide, not a biomolecule, lacks the atom hydrogen. Ammonia, a biomolecule, but it is a smaller biomolecule. When you're talking about biomolecule, it's also called macromolecules, you know, which means they are very big. I mean, like, not only like glucose big, hemoglobin big. There are 4 types of biomolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates are a family of biomolecules that primarily doesn't fall into the void and provide energy. So they are like an instant source of energy or long chains of energy storage, depending on which carbohydrate you are looking at. The most common one is glucose, which I would assume that what everyone have heard of in the hospital is the most simple form of sugar there is, because it's like the example of what they show you during cellular respiration, which you'll probably learn later on. I don't know, man. The chemical formula of glucose is C6H12O6, which is a typical formula of a monosaccharide. A monosaccharide, you can understand it as a monomer, and monomers are typically building blocks of more complex molecules that are called polymers. You can think of it as like building a Lego block, and a monomer is a one piece, and a polymer is a finished Lego. And a polymer of a monosaccharide can be called a disaccharide, which means that there are 2 monomers of carbohydrates, which are monosaccharides, combined together. So basically, oh my gosh, that's a lot of diamonds. Basically, disaccharide is like 2 monosaccharides holding hands, like a high school couple in the hallway. God damn it. So the way that these disaccharides are formed are called the process of dehydration synthesis. These biomolecules, such as glucose, they are formed in part by what's called functional groups. Like a glucose functional group is known as a hydroxyl group. Functional groups are where reactions happen, like the dehydration synthesis. So dehydration synthesis may be 2 glucoses, they both contribute their hydroxyl group, and when they both come out, 1 oxygen remains in the middle and the water comes out. It's like squeezing sponge. You dehydrate the sponge by taking the water out. And oppositely, if you want to break up the couple, which I encourage you to do, it's to use a water molecule instead of taking one out. And it's just basically the reverse of dehydration synthesis. It's called hydrolysis. The LYS, by the way, means to cut something. So yeah, that's the 2 processes that you need to remember. Why are you in this? Oh, what was that damage? Now, just like these guys in the chat, polymers are the most annoying thing to memorize. Now, one of the most popular example of a polysaccharide is called a starch, which is just basically a long chain of glucose, like in a row, a very compact source of energy. Below there, oh, you have a TNT. Come prepared. What a shame. I have glasses. Hello. Oh wait, I'm gonna stay here while I get these finals. Ah! I have all the coins and you have 3 HP. Get out. There's also glycogen and cellulose. They're just basically different complex configurations of the molecule glucose. They are slightly harder to digest, especially cellulose, because we humans, we cannot digest those. Cows can, and they eat the grass, and we cows, well, I guess that works out. Anyhow, I need to break this bed here. I'm just so focused on my monologue that I didn't notice that this guy is about to respawn. Okay, and this is your last chance to respawn, sir. Glycogen is like in animals, and cellulose and starch are in plants. To digest these polysaccharides, animals usually need a thing called enzyme, which is a type of protein. And my bed is gone. So enzymes are used to digest those large polysaccharides by breaking them down into smaller, more digestible units like glucose. And the next type of biomolecule is lipids, which are long chain fatty acids, which you can consider as a monomer of a bigger unit called a triglyceride or diglyceride, like depending on how many chains of fatty acids there are. But it is not considered a monomer because like they're combined by two different types of thing. And the other type is called glycerol, which is like the 3-carbon thing, and it has like hydrogens around it, and they like attach all these fatty acids together. Why am I like acting if I'm drawing on a if I'm drawing on a blackboard? So a fatty acid is just a really long chain of carbon. We call it the hydrocarbon backbone, which is exactly what it means. It's basically just hydrogen around carbon. Carbons have 4 valence electrons, by the way, so in a loose dot structure, they're usually drawn with 4 atoms behind around them, in exceptions of cases where there is a double bonding. And the double bonding appears in unsaturated fats, which is when one or more carbon atoms are not saturated with hydrogen. And an unsaturated fat is usually liquid in room temperature, such as, you know, a vegetable oil. A saturated fat is usually animal fat. They are solid in room temperature, and all of their carbon in the fatty acid chain is saturated with hydrogen. Like there's no double bonding, and every carbon always have 2 hydrogen or more hydrogen around. And there's a last type of fat, which is artificial. One special example of lipids is called a phospholipid. Is when the glycerol is swapped out with another functional group called the phosphate group, which is, oh my, that's a lot of damage from that stone sword. And the phospholipid has 2 fatty acids. One is saturated and one is unsaturated. You will learn more about this, of like basically why it is and what function it has. Oh my god, this guy is sweating his butt off. What's happening? I have to focus here again. I just want to teach my bio lesson, man. Please. I just want to make some people be more knowledgeable. Stop stopping me from doing that. And oh, that guy just left. He's apparently not on the win streak. So essentially, like one tail is hydrophilic and one tail is hydrophobic, so that when it's forming cell membranes, it can like cut out the water by forming a double layer, which you will learn more in cellular transportation. Slightly more complex lipids contains hexagon-shaped carbon and stuff, including things like waxes, steroids. Let me think what else like complex lipids there are. Oh, cholesterol. Cholesterol is an important one. It's like also in cell membrane, which we will learn about in cellular transportation. And I might do a lesson on that. Probably no one is gonna watch this one because it's just super boring to most people, but biomolecule is actually my favorite unit. Games. Proteins. They're important biomolecules that carry cellular function. Wow, I just built a perfect header and forgot to complete my head. Okay. Hello, get out of here. Why are we still building blocks? They metabolize, they like support, regulate, whatever function that there are, they do, alright? Proteins are like the superheroes of a cell. And amino acids are the monomers of a complete protein. Amino acids, they are formed with 2 carbons, 1 nitrogen, and each of them has a rest group, which is standard by the R. So it basically determines what the identity of the protein is. So different proteins will have different R groups. So peptides are like the polymers of proteins. They usually contain 2 or more. 2 is called a dipeptide, and a more is called a polypeptide, which is, you know, basically like the naming scheme of a carbohydrate. So yeah, it's pretty easy to memorize if you get like the mono and poly thing. It's just generally very helpful to memorize like the prefixes in biomolecules anyways. And the way that peptides form is also dehydration synthesis, and the way they breaks apart is also hydrolysis. It's basically the same as carbohydrates in a sense. And protein is like the base, basically the one group that contains the most I just lost that game. I love myself. Protein is the family of biomolecules that contains the most element nitrogen. And some proteins are hormones, some proteins are like muscle tissues, and the most important ones that you are probably going to learn is enzymes. They perform hydrolysis and dehydration synthesis, and just all sorts of chemical reaction. They don't make those reactions happen, like they would have happened anyway, but they accelerates the reactions, which is really essential. The shape of protein is very necessary for its function, and the shape is maintained by its optimal temperature and pH. Those are the two factors that affects the function of a protein. And for enzymes, those are even more essential, because when a very strong acid or base touches its active site, would change shape, and so whatever that enzyme is supposed to do, it cannot do it anymore, because its shape is changed, and the respective molecule is supposed to like break up or synthesize. They're no longer like, you know, able to fit in, because the acids change the shape of the enzyme. And proteins are the molecules that can get very, very big. They have like separate level of organization. So the first structure is the primary structure. It represents the polypeptide as a straight line, alright? Like a starch, but with amino acids. The secondary structure, I think they are alpha helixes or plated sheet. And the tertiary structure is when the protein is more globular, contain both of the forms of the secondary structure. And the fourth phase, which is the quaternary, which is when the protein is like functional. It can proceed to do any type of processes that you want it to do. And the last family of biomolecules is called the nucleic acids. One of the most popular example that you can hear is DNA, which is, you know, the genetic information, which is exactly what nucleic acids are. They're genetic informations. Everyone has unique ones of them, and they're basically how life works. All right, so genetic information dictates what type of protein you make by the process of protein synthesis, which you will learn in a separate unit, probably. I don't know, man. I don't know if you're in 9th grade. So a nucleotide is you can consider it as a monomer of a nucleic acid. It contains 3 parts. One is a phosphate group. The other one is I think a 5-carbon sugar, and the third one is a nitrogen containing base. There's 4 types of them. You probably learned them in 6th grade. There are adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. In RNA, there's 1 extra. I cannot think of the name. So there are 2 primary types of nucleic acid that you need to know about. The first one is DNA, which are 2 chains of like nucleotides that are connected, which is like super long and like complex. And then RNA, which is another nucleic acid. The R stands for ribose, which is the name of the 5-carbon sugar. DNA is deoxyribose, which is another form of that sugar, just, you know, deoxygenated. So that's basically one difference of them. And the other difference is that it only has 1 strand. And for the DNA, the 2 strands are combined together by a hydrogen bond, which are considered to be pretty weak. The last type of nucleic acid that you need to know is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. I think the adenosine is simple. It's just an adenosine group, and the triphosphate is simple because there are 3 phosphates. The phosphates groups are connected to each other via very high energy bonds that when they are broken up, it releases a ton of energy. And when the ATP is broken apart into a 2-phosphate molecule and a phosphate group, it is called an adenosine diphosphate. Sorry, which means that it only has 2 phosphate groups left. That process is very different from hydrolysis because it does release energy. Same for like when they are put back, it's very different from dehydration synthesis. You need energy to put it back. Okay, so that's a short lesson on biomolecules. I've been uploading a lot less lately, so I thought to make this video as a compensation for that. Just put it like that. And if you want to listen to more bio lessons, wait, why? So yeah, that's another trash upload in my book. Bye.